As I mentioned, one of the things that's really come up a lot in this, and that I've been hearing a lot kind of from all of you, is the role of collaboration and finding the right partners and stakeholders and engaging them. And so I wanted to throw that out to you guys. How do you find those right partners? And I know for us in Mighty Buildings, it's something that we've done a lot of. I mean, because we're coming at it from an incredibly innovative space. And so we've been able to identify key partners like Underwriters Laboratories, International Code Council, California's Housing and Community Development, and their Factory Built Housing program. And so we've been really successful in that. But I'm kind of curious how you guys, coming at it more from the traditional construction space and looking at innovation, identify those partners and in order to move some things forward. And if you want, I can just call on someone, but if anyone is particularly excited to jump in on that one.
I'll kick us off on that. I mean, from a builder's perspective, we've worked really hard over the years to make sure that, primarily the vendor partners that we work with, because we consider ourselves an innovative company and we're always trying to push the next innovative feature forward. We've been on a path for, since 2012, and just taking a step-by-step approach at getting better and better, whether it be in energy efficiency or health. I think carbon's next for us. And so we've worked really hard to get to know the owners of the companies, what they want out of their organization. And what we found is, I think that there's a misconception that trades don't care, and they do care. They care very much about the work that they do. They want to do quality work, and a great deal of them want to be involved in projects that they can hang their hat on. They want to be involved in projects that are doing something new and innovative. So although those conversations can be tough, because it does trickle down to the individuals in the field to have that, to do the installation and that last piece of implementation, finding those partners that it's meaningful for them personally and for their company to be attached to the project. It's just not all about volume and numbers. There are a lot of vendor partners out there. There are a lot of suppliers out there that really want to do the right thing. They want to build good quality homes. They want their name to be associated with those other companies in the marketplace that are doing good quality, innovative building. And it's just about having those conversations with the owners and searching out those partners that fit that mold.
Awesome, appreciate that. And Scott, you had specifically mentioned collaboration in your slides, and so I'm curious how you see the best way to bring those kind of stakeholders together. Oh, and you're muted.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, I would have had a conversation with myself, and it wouldn't be the first time. But to echo what Bill said, it is really about finding the right partners that mesh with your vision, and whatever that vision is, whether it's a zero energy home or it is less time on the job site, quicker cycle time, and finding that partner that is willing to work with you to move that dial forward. Working with, if part of your goal is to work towards offsite manufacturing and doing more in a factory ahead of time, then it's finding a partner that'll work with you on that design so it can be made more efficiently. And again, I can't emphasize enough, it's working with that partner to be made more efficiently in the factory. And then the equal part of that is, so when you assemble or build it in the field, finding the right partner that's willing to work with you on the assembly of that. So it's working with, it's finding those partners that are willing to work with you as you innovate in the building industry. You're going to, depending on your goal, it'll be your selection process. It won't always be the cheapest guy, but it may end up saving you money in the long run.
That's a great point, and that's actually something that brings me to another one of the concepts that's kind of flowed throughout is the idea of business value. And how do you really, when you're looking at innovation, how do you identify that value? Because prior to Mighty Buildings, I was working as a sustainability consultant, helping organizations optimize looking mainly at building systems, so HVAC, envelope, windows, lighting, all that. And I would rarely talk about sustainability until the very end. It was all about how do you demonstrate that business case? Because at the end of the day, it's about balancing people, planet, and profit. Because as Anthony mentioned, if you're not making any money, you're not going to have any impact. And so something that I'd love to bring that to you, and Caroline and Anthony in on that, to get your thoughts. And then also, Caroline, I do want to hear more about this idea that you both discussed a bit, which is that idea of basically kind of being able to be willing to kill your own ideas. How do you, and that gets to the question that Jerry brought up earlier, is how do you do a quick thumbs up, thumbs down? I know that's a lot wrapped into one, but to me, the business value is really tied to that. And so I'll start with you, Carolina, and then I would love to hear from you, Anthony.
Well, sometimes that has to do with timing, right? So sometimes it's just not right now. Sometimes ideas have to wait until their time is here, right? So definitely not forgetting that was brought up, and keeping track and having somebody kind of hold on to those until the time's right. What we've done at Stowe, Stowe has a great partnership of Stowe panel affiliates throughout the United States. And, they are an amazing partner because they're the boots on the ground in terms of innovation for panelizing, but also with field applied stuff. So they help us innovate. I think communication internally, when I was with Nietzsche Hot, the technical team needs to be able to talk to the sales team. The sales team is talking to the clients, to the architects, to the designers, to the installers, the end users. So the information has to flow from the people needing the innovation. And most of the time, the people that need it don't really know what they need. So we have to kind of guess, and we have to be like 3 steps ahead of what it is that the market needs sometimes, because as we've seen with products that have come in and out and become obsolete, sometimes the clients can lead us astray from where we actually need to be in terms of technology and innovation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Anthony?
Yeah, and from the IBACOS side, talking about the key stakeholders, we actually strategically pick the key stakeholders that we want to get involved, that could help us with the economics, that could help us with what does it mean from a performance perspective, and what does it mean from productivity. And so obviously we have the privileges of working with some big, large builders. And on the business value side, if we can prove it with the big guys, it'll work for anyone, because they're the most constraint from an economic standpoint. And at some point they share with us some of their numbers, let's be honest. And that's how we can really validate what this technology or idea means from a business perspective, and can it make money. So that's from our perspective. We have the privilege of working with big builders and close working relationships. It helps us. So
awesome. And Chris, as given the Denver Housing Authority owns tons of property, I'm really curious to get your perspective from an owner, but then also kind of on the regulatory side, from your perspective as a in the regulatory space, what's it look like to create that space for that innovation, given the sad reality that the building codes are written in blood. They exist because things went wrong, and so we really need to demonstrate that safety. So kind of throwing a lot at you there, but curious on your perspective.
Yeah. Well, and I go back to the theme of collaboration. I think about, where I'm always challenged, we learn a lot from each project, and think about how could we have done that better? How could we have, still got everything that we wanted in this project? And I think one, regulation that we have to follow that actually has a benefit, if you write a really good RFP, right, you get this. And of course, we're, definitely benefit from large projects. We get a lot of great feedback on, a design build team and design assist, and where I think there's a gap, especially with the typical design assist, is that you're getting per square foot numbers. You have a budget on, skin, or, you have the GC just kind of there tracking the budget, rather than being really integrative up front and bringing in suppliers, start talking about those products at schematic level designs, right? And start to really dial in your budget. And of course, looking at, offsite construction, that's something that we want to get into. The one that I think from a regulation standpoint, and even in the tax credit world for affordable housing, is loading costs up front. A lot of the integrated design is going to cost money up front. But if you can prove, and there's case studies that show how you can get a better product and a better building, if you invest early and you get partners lined up that are committed to that and can meet your budget, that I think that it's a shift from the owner perspective to go out to the world and say, this is what we want. This is how we want to do it. And maybe there's a possibility to think about how that can, be shared between, partners and best practices going forward.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And one thing Carolina touched on, this idea of safe space and how do you really create the room for the innovation in the first place? And so I kind of want to throw that out to all of you, and curious to get your thoughts from your different perspectives in the area. Because obviously, I mean, Anthony, it sounds like you guys, I mean, you focus on ideas, so you kind of inherently have that safe space. But then Chris, when you guys are coming at it, obviously you've got all these regulatory requirements and certain things you have to line up and have to be done a certain way. And then so there may be less opportunity to truly drive forward with that. And then Bill and Scott, and similar kind of in between there, you've got different forces. And then obviously more broadly, we have this idea as a society that we have a need for short-term returns but in a lot of cases, a lot of your best innovations might actually be more expensive in the short term, but in the long term, you're able to really create a much stronger offering and something that's really going to move us forward as an industry. And so how do you create the space for those ideas as well? And I think, and actually I'll throw that to you, Anthony, to start. And then I want to hear Bill come to you next, and then just go around that way.
Sure. So, from IBACOS side, it's a safe place to come up with ideas here. We're all coming up with ideas. And like I said, the quicker we can kill an idea, no one gets offended in the group. That's our culture. If it's an idea that's just not ready, like Carolina said, we put it on the shelf, and at a certain moment, we'll bring it back out. But and then we're always looking for, opportunities to invest in that idea if we know it has value. So, we have to work sometimes with the government because they're good funders for early stage innovation. So that keeps our ideas, growing and nurturing, even though it's not ready yet for the market, but it keeps it nurturing and gets us further down the line.
And Bill, from your perspective on the builder side.
Yeah, sure. I think there's a couple of things that we've done. First off is our brand is really important to us, and our brand is a brand built around innovation. Our brand is efficient, healthy, and local. So those are the things we focus on, and we make sure that the people that we bring onto our teams are inspired by that. It's one of the reasons why they're here. So they're from the beginning naturally wired for this kind of innovative thought process. The second thing we do is we make sure we provide a lot of training. We make sure that they understand the building science, they understand energy efficiency, they understand what we're doing now and why we're doing it and how it works, so that they have the background knowledge to come up with ideas and spur that thought. The third thing is we have an open book culture here. We subscribe to the open book philosophy. The executive team is constantly sharing out with the team. We require every team to share out with the other teams about how their departments are doing, good or bad. And it's not an atmosphere of negativity, or this is an atmosphere of support. So through that, you create an atmosphere of support and collaboration, which spurs on ideas and gives people the confidence that they can raise their hand and speak up.
Awesome. We got one more minute before I'm gonna pass it over to Brian to open it up to the audience questions. But I'd be remiss, and I wouldn't be doing my job as a chief sustainability officer if I didn't say how excited I was to hear sustainability come up multiple times here, because I mean, we all saw the most recent IPCC report, and the time for change is now. I mean, if we're really going to do something, it's the time really is now. And so in Mighty Buildings, we've committed to being carbon neutral by 2028, and really looking at housing and climate crisis as a dual crisis, and really excited about how do we turn housing from a driver of the climate crisis, because 11% of all global emissions are tied to construction, another 30% are tied to building energy use. That doesn't even account for the global warming potential of the waste generated either during construction or end of life. And so right now, it's a huge lever. What if we flipped it? What if we take in all of a sudden something where we're sequestering carbon, we're turning it into an active response to the climate crisis? And so I'm curious from your guys' perspectives, maybe I'll throw this to Chris first, because as an owner perspective, what's it look like to really move that needle and really get people on board and kind of help them understand the sense of urgency? Because it's clear everyone here is into innovation, is kind of looking at that. But how do you see the opportunities for really bring the rest of the industry with us, given the dire nature of the situation?
Yeah, and kind of to that last discussion around just longer term horizons, and there's the premium upfront capital expenses, right, that gets you there. And I'm the numbers guy, and so I really dig into paybacks for operations and maintenance, even looking at different elevator types, different flooring types, like things that will last if we can really dial in what that assumption is for what we otherwise would be spending on our current projects, then it's worth that investment, and it's worth trying to find the funds to put in now, and maybe there's partnerships from, not that, we're going to try to find more handouts from the government, that, like you said, we need to find market rate solutions to these things. But I think that it's the shift of, showing durability, just like when LED lights came out, right? No one knew how long those would really last. They were just, oh yeah, it'll be 40, 50 years. But now we can start to look back at some of these new innovative products and really show the durability compared to, what would be your kind of base, scope otherwise. And, especially for our, we're paying for all utilities. So I always really factor that in for our residents, is like, we should be spending more now, because long term, financially, the authority is going to get the payback on it, right?
Great. And Anthony, I see your hand raised there.
Carbon neutrality is a top focus for us right now. Just one couple points. That's where the innovation is going to be headed. How can we solve this carbon neutrality problem? And this is my opinion, my hypothesis. Offsite construction practices is going to make that carbon neutrality story a lot easier for production home builders. If they don't do it, it's going to be very, very difficult to meet some of these goals. And then the last point I wanted to make is solar and batteries does not offset operational carbon. That's a big point that builders need to be aware of. That's it.
Yeah, or embodied carbon for that matter. And then I think part of it's also, getting the industry to understand operational versus embodied carbon. I mean, your embodied carbon, everything that goes into making it, and then obviously the operational, all the carbon you're generating from your energy use, your appliances, everything you're doing during the lifespan. So that's something, a great conversation we've been having. And as much as I want to keep going with these questions, you guys, I'm going to pass it over to Brian so we can get some of the audience questions in here.
Okay, I'll start with a question from Elena. It's to Carolina. Can you give us an example of what planning for failure might look like? Is it more of a value or cultural based principle?
I just typed a pretty long response to that one.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Well, I mean, it's long because it's a long discussion, and I welcome everybody else to chime in, but it can be a very specific thing, and it should be as specific as you can. Borrowing from Sun Tzu, you gotta figure out, you gotta win the war before you fight it, right? So think of all of the things that can possibly go wrong, and there will be more that you can't even think of, and then try to hedge and plan for ways that you're going to overcome those failures. It's kind of like when you're setting goals. You like, let's say you're setting a goal to lose weight. You know that you're not a morning person and you can't get up in the morning. So how are you going to get around getting up in the morning and exercising or whatever it is? Like figuring out all of those possible things that are going to be obstacles and barriers and ways that you could fail, and having a plan of, okay, how are we going to overcome that when that happens, if that happens? So it can be very real, and it can be explicit or implicit depending on the project that you're trying to do. It could be a people problem, it could be a parts problem, it could be a code problem. So it just depends on your situation, but it's definitely a very real, very tangible.
Okay, I'd like to share something from Betsy. I think it's directed to Anthony. It says, you have a unique perspective developing products and construction methods with manufacturing. Now, and having worked with builders on quality and risk management in the past, how are you engaging builders in the innovation development process and helping them with adoption now? How did your former role inform your approach?
Yeah, so former role was, being on builder sites, solving their headaches, whether it was water intrusion or some litigation challenge within a community and a market. So it allowed us to develop a really understanding of what some of the solutions are needed for them to do on their day-to-day building, but also create a lot of strong relationships with different markets, different builders. So knowing sort of their challenges and having some strong relationships enabled us to come up with new ideas, solutions, technologies that are solving some of their litigious issues across the country or in certain markets. So again, we're different than everyone else on this panel. We get to see a lot of stuff and a lot of good stuff and a lot of bad stuff. So it enables us to So do some unique things and test ideas and then work with those builders that have been challenged with those problems, and they get more engaged with us when we come up with a solution for them. So that's sort of our uniqueness in the industry.
Excellent. I have a question for Chris at DHA relative to your comment related to upstreaming some of the decision-making on developments to establish appropriate budgets. We find as architects, we're disconnected many times in the decision-making early on for establishing budgets early on, as well as the contractor from the costing point of view in the design phase. I was wondering, how would you overcome some of those barriers to establish and, bring innovation early on to establish budgets into the projects and, in particular products that might be new and innovative that maybe they haven't even been validated yet as an acceptable product by, in a common way.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I think, especially in my world in affordable community development, every state is always competing for these limited low income housing tax credits. So it really builds majority of new affordable units. And they're competing even at a cost level, right? So when they're coming in and saying, they're looking at a per square foot and a per unit, and you're like, wow, why is this project so much more expensive? We're having to put more resources towards it. So I think it's almost a shift also from those making decisions on how to allocate some of these resources to show that that premium, that additional cost has long-term benefits. So it's almost shifting priorities from that side of the policy that's really controlling the money. And I think one that we're looking at right now, I agree, offsite construction is where we need to go, and the timeline horizon. Even if you had a premium on the cost, if you could go from a 24-month build by 6 months on a project of 100 units, I'm just on the soft cost construction interest, I'm showing $2.5 million that I'd save. So it's like, it's worth it to us. I'm convincing our board that we need to rethink this and figure out why, the industry, well, at least Colorado and Denver Metro, not switching to a modular solution and thinking about the innovation there. And so trying to get the team together to help weed out all the things that are holding that back.
I think using the upstreaming and integrating all stakeholders early on to make the decisions may actually benefit you long-term for cost as well. Less cost ultimately and better product.
Yeah. And even affording more amenities in unit, right? That are costly to put in the field.
Yeah.
I think I'm looking at the clock here and I see Betsy's jumping back on a video. I think that means our time is just about up. I just want to really, really thank all the panelists today for an awesome conversation. We could have done this for hours. There so much rich content here. And just again, another great thank you to Brian for helping facilitate questions there, and to Betsy, Natalie, Dennis, and the team, Paige, and the team at Housing Innovation Alliance for putting this together. And thank you guys for joining. Hopefully you'll stick around for the next panel coming up in 15 minutes on fragmentation of the industry, and I'll let Betsy chat a little more about that.
Yeah, so we've got a great panel coming up at 1:15, I should say, focused on fragmentation of the industry. The format's the same as this one is. And then be sure to stick around if you can join us at 2:15 Eastern for a 45-minute session. We're doing concurrent working groups. So there will be one room that's focused on risks and a room that's focused on fragmentation of the industry. So on your agenda, when you get to that point, just be very careful to look at the information to the left and be sure that you're clicking on join for the room that you want to be a part of later. But excited to get people who've been sitting and listening on the phone active in those discussions and sharing what your thoughts are as well. And I'll just reiterate what Sam said and thank Sam as well for being so energetic. I don't know where you get all of that energy.
Coffee, lots and lots of coffee.
All right, well, we'll see you hopefully in 15 minutes for fragmentation of the industry to continue the discussion. But thanks so much.
Thanks,
Take care,
Betsy.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Take care.
Take care, all.
Bye now.